Okay, we're getting ready to start this painting unit, and you should have already have your abstraction done. We outlined it with permanent marker so you can see it a little bit better. I'm going to talk to you about using watercolor. So you have in your set of watercolors, you have this new little round brush. Okay, so when we work with watercolor, the paint palettes are actually dry. So you have to wet your brush and you have to wet the paint, okay, in order to get that to soften up enough to use it. So we're just going to talk a little bit about using the brushes. So when you're using the brush, okay, you're kind of holding it like a pencil. And if you want to get a straight line, instead of trying to use the tip of the brush, we're going to use the side of the brush to make a straight line, and you're pulling towards you, as you can see that. Now, some other things about watercolor. If you have a wet area, okay, which I have this wet area here, and I'm going to try to put another color, and I'm in a hurry and I'm painting right next to it. If you paint next to something that's wet, it is going to bleed together. And you can see, let me zoom in a little bit here. You can see that this is kind of running together and it's not a very straight, fine edge. Okay, we don't want to do that. So when we're painting, we want to make sure that we paint, let something dry, and then after it's dry, you can paint next to each other. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. And here is my example. I'm going to show you some finished examples after I start. There's several different brushes. You have 2 in your baggie, and if you're painting in class, you have options to use those also. So this particular one, I'm going to do a complementary color scheme, and I'm going to use orange and blue. So my first go here is I'm grabbing my orange, and I'm going to paint. And when you're painting with watercolor, you can see it's very transparent and light. And you can use water to kind of blend that out and make a nice gradation. Look at that. Do that there. I'm just getting my base layer on. So when you're painting with watercolor, we're going to use layers because the first layer is not always going to be dark enough for you. We're also going to talk about not using too much water, because if you use too much water, it's going to pool on your paper and it's going to kind of make your paper bend and buckle, and that's also something you don't want. So there's my first layer. It's very light. Okay, so I'm going to wait for that to dry a little bit. Now I can't paint over here or over here because it's going to blend together. So I have to pick something else that I want to paint. So I'm going to come down here and I am going to paint this neck underneath my face here. And I'm getting that in there. Using my water to kind of move my brush around and kind of blend it together. Okay, so I don't have any of those streaky lines. Okay, but the thing is, if you blend it too much with your brush, it's going to possibly lift off little pieces of that paper. So just be aware of that. So now I'm going to come back in, and this is pretty dry. I can come back in and do another layer. Let's say that I want to do a gradation. I want to go from dark by her forehead, and I want to keep it light up at the top of her hair. So I'm going to come in with another layer of the same color. You could also use a different color. Maybe you wanted to do like a little bit of red-orange, and we'll talk about that. So I'm darkening that up. I'm rinsing my brush, and then I'm just going to blend that up. And you can see now I've created a gradation, so where it's a little bit darker. Okay. So I can come back in. And another thing, you want to use the brush, whichever brush you decide to use, you want to use the brush that best fits the job. So I'm not going to use this great big brush to paint my lips or my eyes because that is probably going to be too big. So I'm coming in here and I'm going to come back and I'm going to mix a little bit of red orange. And when you're mixing your colors, you can either mix on a foam plate. A lot of times we'll just mix on the lid right here. So I'm just going to mix on the lid right here. I'm going to add a little bit of red just to kind of darken that up. I'm going to come in, I'm going to paint the eyebrows. And notice I'm using my rigger brush, which is my small round brush that I found in my little paint case. Okay, got that there. Now, this is pretty dry, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use some opposite colors. So my opposite color of orange is going to be blue. So I'm going to grab some blue here. And I'm going to do the same thing. Blue's a little bit more intense. You might not have to do as many layers. The darker colors are a little bit easier to get the darks on there. And again, just blending with some water. Same thing on the other one. It's already dry, so I don't have to worry about painting wet. Okay, and I'm just going to keep going until I'm, finished. I might have to let it dry a little bit and paint my face. Notice I'm keeping things cohesive. I'm just doing opposite colors. So I've just done orange, I've done blue, and then I can pick out and do whatever color I want to do on the back side. So I'm going to show you one that's already been slightly finished. Okay, so on this one, let's just say that, okay, I'm done painting with what I want to do here. I might come in and do a little bit more blue on my face. And I want it to be a little lighter, so I'm going to add a little bit more water. So let's say this, everything's dry here. Okay, so I want to come in and do some texture because it's kind of bland, it's kind of boring. So what I can do is I can use my colored pencils that I have. I can also use some markers. Okay, I have some Pentel markers that you will have access to when you're in class. So let's show you a few things that we can do here. So I can come back in and maybe I want to do a little bit of scumbling so I have some kind of hair texture here. Do that. And look at that. Doesn't that look a lot better? Doing that here. That's nice. So I can do some hair, some scumbling. I'm just adding texture to make it more interesting. Okay, so I can use the marker to add that. Okay, I can also come in with some colored pencil. Let's say that you prefer the colored pencil over the marker, or you're home and you don't have markers. So we're going to pull out the blue here. And let's just say we're going to come in here and I am going to maybe I'm going to put more of a pupil in that eye. Maybe I want to do a little bit of shading, get more of a gradation shadow on the lips. Okay, maybe I want to come in here and make this more of a gradation. Maybe I didn't get it enough with my paint. Come in there and just kind of push that a little bit. Okay. So you have the option of using color pencil and marker on top of your paint once the paint is dry. Another thing you can do, let's say that you don't want to add anything, but you want to create some textures. So what you can do, if you're just using paint, after this is completely dry, okay, you can come back in and use what's called a dry brush. So I've got my brush, I'm drying it off with a paper towel so I can get it pretty dry. And I'm just going to pick up a little bit of color here, and maybe I'm just going to do some dots and some texture just to show a little bit of shadow. And this is a dry brush, and just kind of moving that around, kind of blending it out, and that creates more of a shadow there. Okay, you have that there. I can also do some fun things in the back. I can put a texture in the back. I can come in here and I can do some stripes. Okay, and that kind of adds a little bit of pop to my picture. See that there? And I'm going to show you a finished one. So here's one, okay, where I've added texture. I've used some dry brush. I didn't use any color pencil on this, but you can see the marker where I added some texture with the marker. One thing that you can do is maybe you want to come back with your Sharpie. And if you can see this one, this is another one. You can see that I have created some texture just with the Sharpie, and I've added some line variation. So I can come back after everything's dry, and I can just do that line variation that you did on your flowers and your shoes, and just make things pop a little bit more. Make things stand out. Go into those curves and make that line more interesting. It's much better there. Maybe I'm going to do a little bit of texture, just a little bit of texture there underneath. I can do some hatching. I can do some stippling under there. Maybe I want to do a little bit under the nose. Okay, you can do that with a permanent marker. You can also do that just with a regular marker if you prefer to. But you can see here how that just makes things just pop a little bit. So that is going to be what you're going to do. I'm almost done, almost done. If you want to add texture, dry brush, marker, color pencil, that's kind of it in a nutshell. And have fun painting. Enjoy.